Good morning to everyone joining us today. I see Giacomo, Carlo, hello Alessio, good morning to everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Agri-PV. So my name is Dee. I am here with my colleagues Radmila as well as Selma, and we are the team behind the upcoming Agri-PV conference happening on the 3rd of June. And thank you for joining our webinar. So, a quick overview about who we are and what the webinar will be. So we are Solarplaza. We are established in 2004 and we have organized more than 250 events throughout 50 countries. We have a network of almost, I'm not that good with numbers, but 600,000 PV and BESS and Agri-PV, floating PV professionals. We firmly believe that the sun is the solution and we really enjoy sharing knowledge and network, not just through conferences, but in, webinars like today. So then this is kind of the quick agenda. I am doing the intro. Following this, we have a series of presentations. And then at the end, we have a general Q&A. So the webinar will go on for about 45 minutes. And yeah, a nice, what day is it? A nice Wednesday information packet. So on top of this, we also have a platform. This is somewhere where you can post on the Bizboard if you want to sell or buy an Agri-PV project, maybe. We also have an academy. So after this, the recording of the webinar will go there. But we have also done webinars, years before that you can check out. And yeah, you can also check out the network. So with this webinar environment, if you have any questions that we will get to at the end, top right, there's a question box with kind of a square with a question mark on it. Just post there and then we will be able to see it. The presenters will also be able to see it. And if you have any technical issues, let us know in the chat box. Mila and Selma will get back to you and yeah, let you know. You will also get the slides and the full recordings afterwards. So do not worry. So as I mentioned, this webinar is leading up to our conference on Agri-PV. And it will be happening outside of growing season based on the feedback of the farmers that we have. And also a very insistent James McDonald from NG. He insisted it happen outside of growing season. So, and to get everyone on the same page, Agri-PV, at least how we kind of broadly, is the integrated use of land for both PV and agricultural production. So this is the broad definition. There are many different configurations, case and country specific, that we will get to. It is also growing at different speeds across key markets, supported by different country legislations. So we hope this webinar to give you a clear view across 4 countries so that you can have an idea on where the opportunities are and also maybe predict where the challenges come. Okay, so without further ado, we will go to the first country, France. I invite the attorney at law from Jean-Tet, Tatiana Boudreau. You have the floor and the mouse control that my colleague will give to you.
Thank you very much, Dee. Hello, everyone. So my name is Tatiana Boudreau. I'm a lawyer specializing in renewable energy law at Jean-Tet, which is a French law firm founded in 1924 with 200 attorneys that offers multidisciplinary expertise. And today I'll be presenting the French legal framework for agrivoltaics. France is among the first countries to have developed a specific legal framework for this emerging sector, acknowledging its combined agricultural and energy value. In France, the Energy Code sets a target of 33% of energy produced from renewable sources in gross final energy consumption by 2030. And to meet this target, the government is aiming for 48 gigawatts of installed solar capacity by 2030, rising to between 55 and 80 gigawatts by 2035. At the same time, the preservation of agricultural land is a political and legislative priority in France, which has led to the need to reconcile the two goals, the development of renewable energy and the protection of agricultural land. That is why a law in March 10, 2023 established two legal categories of solar installations that may be authorized in France. On the one hand, agrivoltaic installations, which we'll be discussing today, and on the other hand, photovoltaic installations compatible with agricultural, pastoral, or forestry activities, the development of which has been considerably limited in France, but that's another subject. A decree and an order in April 8 and July 5, 2024 have been adopted to complement the law. They provide the operational and technical framework. So, under the law, the terms of the law, an agrivoltaic installation in France is an electricity generation facility that uses the sun's radiant energy and whose modules are situated on an agricultural plot where they contribute sustainably to the establishment, maintenance, or development of agricultural production. To put it more simply, an agrivoltaic installation is defined in France as one that allows a parcel of agricultural land to remain its primary use, whilst also producing electricity from solar energy. This new legal framework has established several criteria that a facility must meet to be considered agrivoltaic. And compliance with these criteria will be verified on several occasions throughout the facility's lifespan. It is therefore not merely expected that these criteria be met at the time of the authorization application. They must continue to be satisfied throughout the entire lifetime of the installation, and the compliance will be verified on several occasions. So, about the criteria. First, the installation must provide a direct service to the farmland from among 4 services: improving agronomic potential, adaptation to climate change, protection against hazards, and improving animal welfare. Moreover, the facility must not substantially impair any of these services, nor may it impair more than 2 of those services. Secondly, the installation must ensure a significant agricultural production. This criterion is assessed differently depending on the type of agricultural production, but overall, agricultural activity on the site must not fall below the threshold of 90% of yield. To put it another way, if the yield or the relevant indicator in the case of livestock farming has fallen by more than 10% following installation, it is considered that the agrivoltaic installation does not allow for the maintenance of significant agricultural activity. So it is therefore not compliant with the regulation and it cannot be authorized. Thirdly, the installation must generate a sustainable income for the farmer. The sustainability of income from agricultural production is assessed over time. It is considered sustainable if the average income for the sale of the farm's crop and livestock production is not lower than the average income prior to the installation of the agrivoltaic system. And the average is calculated over the last 5 years. Fourthly, the agricultural production must remain the main activity. It is considered that it is the case if the area of the agricultural plot that is not longer usable due to the agrivoltaic installation does not exceed 10% of the total area of that same agricultural plot. And besides, the height of the agrivoltaic installation, as well as the spacing between rows, allows for normal farming operations and ensures, in particular, access, physical safety, and shelter for animals. Finally, last criteria, the installation must be reversible, which means that the panels can be removed without causing permanent damage to the land. So this is in broad term the new legal framework, which is only just beginning to take shape, as the law provides for its application to installation for which an application for authorization was submitted on or after May 9, 2024. We therefore do not yet have sufficient insights to assess whether this framework will simplify matter and enable the widespread development of agrivoltaic installations, or whether, on the contrary, it will limit the growth of such installations. At first glance, and for now, the legal framework introduced appears to be more of a hindrance than a catalyst, particularly due to the obligation to consult the Departmental Commission for the Preservation of Natural, Agricultural and Forest Areas, whose formal opinion, and so the formal negative opinion, is binding on the prefect and obliges him to refuse the application. And as things stand, this commission quite frequently takes a negative view of the agrivoltaic projects submitted to it. But we're still in the early ages of this new system, and it's progressively taking shape. So we can imagine and we hope that things will change. So this concludes our very succinct presentation of the newly enacted French regulations on agrivoltaic systems. I wanted to raise one final point before drawing to a close. The creation of this new legal framework has not, at least for the time being, led to the introduction of dedicated public support with dedicated calls for tenders. Changes have been introduced into the new tender specification for building integrated and ground-mounted solar projects to clarify the position of agrivoltaic installations in relation to these two types of installations. But for the time being, that is all. We expect, however, of course, developments on the subject in the future and specific dedicated public support. So to conclude, France now has a dedicated legal framework for agrivoltaics built around the law of March 10, 2023, and is implementing decrees. The framework is based on clear statutory definition comprising 5 cumulative criteria designed to ensure that agricultural land remains generally agricultural. And the scheme is not, however, free from uncertainties. Some definitions, for instance, are not very clear, which will almost certainly fuel litigation, and in fact, it has already begun. But this will gradually help to clarify all the parameters. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. If anyone has any questions for this, you can start putting it in the question box. And yeah, thank you for the overview on France. Now let's take a little journey to Italy. Amazing. So I want to welcome the president of the newly founded Agrivoltaica, Alessio Pinzoni, to take us through the latest developments happening in Italy that I'm really excited to hear about. Alessio, over to you.
Thanks, Dee. I would like to give an overview of the regulatory framework and the main point of the Agri-PV in Italy. So the first definition of the Agri-PV was already introduced in Italy in 2012 with the Law Decree 1 of the same year. However, even if the spread of the Agri-PV started before 2020 in Italy, the real technical guidelines were published only on 2022, introducing several constraints and requirements of what is an Agri-PV compared to a standard PV. In particular, they introduced the definition of standard Agri-PV and advanced AgriPV. A part of the main requirement that the advanced AgriPV had referring to the standard one, the main difference between the two technology were based on the minimum height that the structure must have in the advanced AgriPV, that were 1.3 meters for the livestock activity and 2.1 meters for the agricultural activities. Later on, we have the AgriPV became really mainstream on June 2024, thanks to the PNRR support that drive really a stronger market uptake. This support was had the possibility to implement 2 gigawatts of AgriPV plants that are now in the hand of the construction and should be connected by June 2026, so pretty recent, and allow all the AgriPV plants that reach the tariff of 40% grants and a 20-year CFD scheme, so with after the feed-in tariffs, a fixed tariff. By the end of 2024, thanks to the introduction of what is called Testo Unico, introduced for the first time also a restriction of the standard PV plants to be installed in agricultural lands. This restriction was much more enforced by the Law Decree 127 that was published by the end of 2024. So right now, a part of really limited area is not possible anymore to build any standard PV plant in agricultural lands in Italy. This what have an impact on the market status and the outlook. If we are looking at the new application from 2020 up to 2025, we see that there was 130 gigawatt of total PV pipeline, of which 60% of this total pipeline was AgriPV projects. Later on, if we are looking at the project maturities of this technology, we notice that in terms of scaling solar plants, 15 gigawatt of plants are already completed the environmental approvals, and 10% are fully authorized, and the 2 gigawatt that we already mentioned, thanks to the PNRR, are under construction and should be connected by June of this year. If we are looking at the development of the new application, new authorization in Italy, we noticed that there was a pretty large increase up to 2024 and a decrease on 2025. This was not caused by the decrease of the technology itself, but a new regulation that affect all the PV, the solar technology. So for this year, the application due to this restriction, this new law, decrease compared to the previous one. We expect that in 2026, thanks to several clarification in that country, the numbers should be aligned more to the previous year. So, which is the framework, the actual framework? Sorry, I just switch on. I should go back. But which is the actual framework and key regulatory requirements in Italy? So we mentioned already the Law 175 that was published by the end of 2025. There are 2 main points that must be really highlighted when a developer wants to build an AgriPV plant. The first one is the continuity of agricultural activity that must be ensured. This concept was already present in the previous regulation, and a minimum of 80% of pre-project agricultural turnover that must be maintained. So we are not focusing on the grass production, but we are focusing more on the turnover activity. So in order to give financial stabilization also on the agricultural activity, which is the future in terms of regulation. The new regulation removed the minimum haying constraint, so the 1.3 for the livestock activity and the 2.1 for the agricultural one. This means less capex in order to implement Agri-PV plants, but introduced two main requirements. The first one is the mandatory certification of agricultural production. So the gross production and the turnover must be certified each year. And in case of any of these requirements won't be respected, the municipality itself can control the status of the Agri-PV and might also give penalties for the non-compliance that have a range between 1,000 euros and 100,000 euros for each plant. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Alessio. So for our next presenter, we cut to the country of Germany. He is a member of VINUP, which is a German association, but he is also an investor and CFO in Next to Sun. I'd like to invite Sascha Kraus-Dunker. You have the mouse control and the
Yes, I got it. Thanks a lot.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks for having me here and giving the opportunity to speak. I will give some insights about the current status in the German market. As already mentioned, I'm in my career, so working for Next to Sun as a CFO, but I'm also the chairman of VINUP, which is a German association for sustainable agrivoltaic. Maybe we get slides over here, and we have the goal to support agrivoltaic and make it happen, scale it up, but in a very sustainable way. And sustainability for us means especially that it really helps the farmers. So our goals as an association is to protect the agriculture and support the farmers with their daily business, and also supporting the energy transition, of course, and support the political decision making, and also strengthening the public acceptance of agrivoltaics, which is, I think, for nearly all countries more or less quite new. And this is our business as an association where we are working on and making things happen. If we now look at Germany, we see that we already have some framework. I'm waiting until the PowerPoint switches. Oh yeah, there it is. We already have a quite sophisticated framework, I would say, based on the DIN Spec. I think DIN Spec is quite known, so I do not, let's say, also explain everything about the DIN Spec. Only one point, I think DIN Spec is well known as, let's say, the first bigger or more sophisticated definition of agrivoltaic, which is already 3, 4, 5 years, don't know, old. And we are currently working on that to revise it. DIN Spec as some sort of pre-norm, and all the German regulation, which is mentioned here, I will come back to this soon, is based on the DIN Spec. Currently, we are working on, let's say, a revision of DIN Spec and bring it to from a pre-norm on a formal norm level. And let's say this process is just started. But what I can already say is we are also working with it, is that we're trying to get a more, let's say, easier to handle framework with less difficult checks on the agricultural side and more objective measures which allow allow the agricultural use. Yeah? So in terms of working weights, height, and things like that. These are the topics we are working on. But this process will still take, don't know, 1 year, I would expect, at least. And currently, everything in Germany is based on DIN Spec. And we see here some quite important building blocks. That's on the one hand, the agricultural law, where it is defined that also agriculture in agrivoltaic plants, in brackets, let's say based on DIN Spec, get the agricultural subsidy, or at least a share of it, 85 or more %, which is very important for the farmers. We have also in the building law the establishment of agrivoltaics, where it is it is fixed that you can have smaller portions around your farm. It's up to 2.5 hectare. Can have an easier building permit, yeah, to get to establish an agrivoltaics plant. Inheritance tax law is also very important for the farmers, yeah, since in Germany there are special regulations on the inheritance of land, of agricultural land. And Agri-PV is classified as agricultural and forestry assets, which is with a lower tax compared to other land. And this is also a very important topic for the farmers. But there's one building block missing, and that's the EEG feed-in scheme, yeah, the solar package 1. And this is what I will focus on right now. And that's also the reason why we do not see so much agrivoltaics so far in Germany. There are some coming and building. Just I think the last message I saw was a 40 megawatt in Bavaria. We as Next to Sun built many ones, but it's still only a very, very little share compared to ground-mounted PV establishment in Germany. And the reason is that we are still waiting for this final building block, which help us to make it scale it up. Unfortunately, can you one slide forward? Seems not to work. Okay. So this was an overview of what was planned in 2024. Now, so this was not even planned. It was not only planned, it was the German government decided on that. A special tender for agrivoltaic, yeah, which should start with 300 megawatts in 2024, 800 2025. 2026, we would already have 1.2 gigawatt, up to more than 2 gigawatt from 2029 on. And it was already completely finished by the German government, but it was stuck in Brussels. So and it's this is should have been the market rollout. Everything else was prepared, but this one was missing. And to be very clear, it still is. So I switch a little bit forward. Here we see what happened during the past. Yeah, so it was the approval of the solar package was in April 2024 by both houses of the parliament. All stakeholders really expected it to be already in place in July. Then there was a delay and discussions regarding the EU approval. And then in November 2024, the German government collapsed, and in February 2025, we had elections and a new government. And yeah, in, let's say, end of first quarter 2025, the EU Commission said what's the reason why they don't want to approve it. There was nothing against the agrivoltaic subsidies, but they do not want to allow any changes of EEG scheme anymore until there is a contract for differences included. Yeah, so there was nothing substantially against it, but they don't want to allow any changes. And this is what already, you see, this was a year after. And now we are already nearly 2 years after. There is a leak from the new EEG scheme, which should come up 2027. And there, let's say the agrivoltaic subsidy is already is still or is included, yeah, which is very good news. But it's still in the process, yeah. So it's still under negotiation inside the government, and will then go to the parliamentary process and so on. So in the end, we can quite, let's say we can expect this new regulation not before 2027. That's quite sure, and we hope that we get a clear information about how it will be mid of 2026. But that's the current status, and that's also the reason why not that much agrivoltaics happened so far. This was, of course, very bad news for many companies. Some even went into bankruptcy in this period, which were focused on agrivoltaics. In Germany, we also had, it was also bad for many farmers, which invested time and money and everything in making these projects happen. And we really hope that by the mid of the year, we have a clear way how agrivoltaics can be established in Germany in a larger scale, and we can scale up this business. We as FAUNAP, as the association, we are working a lot on it to convince politicians and work with them to make this last missing link happen, and to see a lot Agri-PV in Germany in the future. And of course, also an invitation to all of you interested in agrivoltaics to join our association and help us to make it happen.
Thank you, Saf, for the overview on Germany. And indeed, there are some really good associations that joined today. And if you want to push for them, you can join. And it depends on which country you are. Feel free to join. Thank you, Sasha.
Yeah.
And for the final country, we go to Spain. I would like to invite the Director of Research, Regulatory and Environmental Affairs at UNEF, Martin Bejacoren, to take the floor. Martin, you have the mouse control, and tell us about all the exciting advancements in your country.
Thank you very much, Dee, and thank you very much to Solarplaza for allowing us to participate in this seminar. My name is Martin Bejar. I am the Director of Research and Environmental Affairs at UNEF. We are a PV association, the leading PV association in Spain. We represent over 90% of the PV sector in Spain, and we work with all the value chain, included Agri-PV at the national, and well, we are trying to work it at the international level as well. And okay, well, I will give a little bit of a status of the market, and then I will go to the regulatory part, as the market is not as developed as other countries in Europe. Nowadays we have in Spain, we have some targets to 2030 that it's very likely that we are going to meet for the ground-mounted plants. And there's been a big rumor in Spain about this, about the land use, and we have made the numbers, and we realized that there's no real competition for the use of land, as in the worst case scenario, all PV ground-mounted plants would be if the whole PV installation that we need for 2030 will be installed in agricultural land. It will leave 99.5% of the agricultural and livestock land free. So we don't think there is that much competition, but the real potential is on the use of water and the irradiation. That those are the problematics, the specific problematics that we are dealing with in Spain. Regarding the projects, we estimate a capacity of 32,000 kilowatt peak approximately. This is a very, very small market because it's mainly pilot projects. What we can see from our association is that we have around 24 pilot projects working right now. It's the white number in the provinces that you see. And we have under development at least 61 new projects that are being subsidized by the ministry. So as I was saying, the project type and the typology are mainly small scale projects. These small scale projects are mainly driven by universities and research centers, and we have other initiatives that are promoted by PV developers within the ground mounted plants, but normally they are not designed to be Agri-PV, but they are systems that are inter-row. So this make it very difficult to know exactly what's the capacity. We don't have a register for Agri-PV projects still in Spain. And another difficulty of tracking this market is that mainly it's they are crops. They use crops that are limited in time, and well, we cannot track the length of the projects. So this make it very difficult. As I was saying, the drivers and of the market are based on incentives from the government, mainly from the Ministry of Agriculture on the operative groups that are sort of a support scheme that they have, and then on the RENOIN, which is the innovation fund from the Ministry of Energy, that we have a little bit more of vision over that. What do we know from the pipeline of projects that we have? We have mainly of those 61 projects that are going to be developed, most of them are overhead systems or over 4 meters tall. So we guess that most of them are mainly for woody crops. So that's the tendency of this tiny small market that we have in Spain for the moment. Regarding the regulatory situation in 2022, it was the first mention of agrivoltaics or agrivoltaics in the general state budget, but the real deal started in 2024 with the grants of the Ministry of Energy. In 2024, there was a call for innovation fund that is that holded 72 million of euros, and in 2025 they launched a second call for these grants that is not being resolved yet. So we believe there will be, as as much as capacity as in the first edition, at least. In the regulation side, well, in October of the last year, there was a modification of the Royal Decree 1048 of 2022, where for the first time agrivoltaics appeared into a national regulation. Before this, we had a small regulation in Catalonia, which was very specific and very similar to the German one. But now we have a national mention on a royal decree that includes the agrivoltaics as eligible for CAP subsidies. This means that the regulation is being developed under the CAP subsidies from the side of the agricultural minister. This is the inclusion that we had last year in this article, and it tells us basically that agriculture should remain the main activity, as we all agree, and as we are seeing from our colleagues in the rest of Europe. It's been regulated under a part of the CAP subsidies that the payment is dedicated into the area and not into the crop. So that means that all subsidies for Agri-PV are not going to ask for an amount of production, but because it's if it remains like it is, it's the subsidies on the land and not on the production. And well, this royal decree also said that agriculture should remain the same, the primary activity, and it will be established some regulatory framework to in order to say what should be considered and what should not be considered agrivoltaics, to ensure that agriculture is still the main activity. So during this year, in 2026, we are expecting a new royal decree that it's going to create this framework. We are still a little bit behind of our colleagues in the rest of Europe, but we are having the same sort of debates. The debates on the how this should be done are in three main points that have been the same as in the rest of Europe. On the one side, we are talking about the projection on the ground. This is to say that the percentage of coverage that the panels should have within this land, and this is mainly, or this has been mainly a debate in the rest of Europe about the shading. Yeah, because if you put more panels, then the shade will grow. So this is something that it's very important. But in Spain, it's a little bit different because we do have more irradiance than, for example, in Germany or in France. So the debate remains the same, but with another perspective. We believe that the shading resilience should be divided, segmented by crops, and not a standard projection. Then the second regulatory debate that we are having is the loss of cultivable area, that we've seen that our neighboring countries as well, they have this limitation in their regulations. And we also wanted to permit a flexible, or we are pushing to have a kind of flexible loss of cultivable area depending on the type of structure. It's not the same for a single axis than an elevated structure. And finally, the crop yield. In this point, I think France and Italy, they do have this kind of limitation, this kind of yield. But in Spain, we believe it is not comparable to normal production, because in normal PV systems, for the permitting, we had some restrictions from the environmental side of the institutions, where it says that power plants are not able to use fertilizers or other kind of tools for this sort of agriculture. So the agriculture of the Agri-PV in Spain should look like closer to an organic kind of agriculture than a normal or conventional production. Then we are having other kind of debates about technical requirements, the ownership of the installations, and all the positive impacts on crops. But I think the main debate is on the first three things that I mentioned: the projection on the ground, the loss of cultivable area, and the crop yield. We have seen so far that in the European countries, that they use these three things to establish a regulatory framework. If it was too high, the restriction, then the Agri-PV systems were not working well. The market was not developing well. So we believe in flexibility of this criteria in order to allow Agri-PV to grow in Spain a little bit. On the other hand, we still don't know if grazing will be included or not. For the moment, it seems that it won't, but well, we believe it should be included as well if it's responsible grazing, and if it's an agrivoltaic grazing, and all grazing should be considered as such. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up on the legal barriers and administrative barriers. We know that there is a lack of knowledge, not only on the institutional side, but also on the agricultural side and the energy side. We still need a lot of work to do to disseminate this idea of Agri-PV, of double use of the land. On the permitting side, we still have troubles to solve. We have different timing between the cycles of permitting for PV that in Spain are around 6 years, and the cycles of agriculture that it's around 1 year normally, depends on the crop. The second barrier for scalability that we see is the design. Nowadays we are having a definition that is being led by the Ministry of Agriculture, based on the cap subsidies, and our fear is that most of the project will be designed in order to get those subsidies and to be considered Agri-PV, and they are not going to have that much to do with the crops. So we are very aware of this. We would like to develop this. We believe that Agri-PV should be developed based on the crop and not on the subsidies. On the other hand, in Spain, as the market is very small, we still have some problems regarding structures, overall elevated structures, but because they are very expensive compared to normal PV structures, and for a small scale projects, the price goes up. So this is something that we need to sort out. Maybe expanding the industry will help. And the third thing is we still don't have standardized metrics for monitoring and for productivity, because as the Ministry of Agriculture is doing this legislation, it's very difficult to get out of the mind that this is not only about kilograms, but also about diversification, water resilience, and some other parameters that are linked to Agri-PV and not only production of the crops. So we still have this issue to sort out. Hopefully we will do it in this next legislation that we are waiting for during the next months. I will leave it here. If you have any questions or anything that I could help with, there it is, my contact number and my email. Thank you very much, Dee.
Thank you, Martin. It's great to have you here. I would like to invite all the other speakers as well to turn on their cameras for the Q&A session. We have a few questions coming through. I will take them quickly. So we have a question from Carlo Pecora for you, Alessio. And the question is, do you know how Agri-PV sites are being monitored and inspected? And are aspects of these configurations that stand? Okay, so how are Agri-PV sites currently being monitored and inspected? And are standard PV O&M toolings not working that well for Agri-PV? Alessio, this is a question for you, and maybe Sasha, if you know, you can also mention it.
Well, it's a good question. First of all, because not all the municipality have the technical capability to monitoring the requirements during the first 5 years. So will be based on the capability of each municipality actually. There are no regulation or technical specification for this, but however, they say that the requirements are pretty clear. So if any of the technical department inside the municipality will have to make this kind of monitoring, the rules are pretty clear. And of course, later on, there will be, as always, discussion between the IPP and the inspector itself. Regarding the O&M, I think there are a lot of challenges that expected to be considered during the next year. One of these is the O&M, of course. From my perspective, there won't be any more standard O&M process for several reasons. Just to give you a couple of examples, the first one is the health and safety regulation inside the field. Other side is because the machinery that we use usually in the O&M activity are not really aligned to the agricultural activities. And so my expectation is that there will be a modification of the maintenance activities, and probably the agricultural company, so the farmer, will have potentially a big role in this that might somehow reduce also the OPEX in the Agri-PV technology itself.
Thank you, Alessio. Sasha, do you have anything to add?
Well, not a short answer. So I think from technical point, it's clear that you always need to say on both sides in terms of operation and maintenance, both sides need to care for each other. So of course you cannot, let's say, go into the field and clean it and go across the wheat or whatsoever is grown there. So this is something where let's say the PV needs to care for the agriculture. And also the other way around. It's always needs to be a project which is, let's say, developed between both the farmer and the developer in the energy side, that to ensure that both works. I think this is a technical perspective. In many countries, you also have the regulatory perspective, which says, okay, but there must be agricultural activity and need to be measured and so on. And this is something where, let's say, we start with the new DEAN process to went into another direction, since this, agriculture is always under uncertainty. And this is, of course, an issue. And also a risk for the bankability of the project. And that's why with the new DEAN, we are heading more in another direction, away from measuring agricultural crop yield and stuff like that, and on the moving more into a direction where we let's say set standards which need to be left for the agriculture, and which can be measured, and that's not necessary anymore to measure agricultural results and things like that.
Okay, thanks, Sasha.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you, Martijn. What are the chances of applying agrivoltaics to livestock farming and being compatible with the CAP in Spain? So it's a question from Jose for you.
Okay, thank you. Well, this we are talking with the Ministry of Agriculture in order to include this under the definition and under the CAP payments. It's very difficult because currently in Spain we have most of the power plants in the permitting cycle. They have these restrictions that they for the grazing they need to use sheep. But we believe not all of this should be considered as such as agrivoltaics. Agrivoltaics should have a synergy between the field and the shadow. Yeah. So we believe if you are doing a regenerative kind of work with the soil, then that should be considered as such. So we are trying to see if the ministry is going to add this, because at the moment it's only for crops.
Okay. And I suppose Jose also wanted to know what could be the time frame. I don't know if you're able to give an answer, if you were to guess, or
I don't know when they are going to launch the new royal decree, but
okay.
I guess it will be during this year, hopefully during the next 6 months or so. It depends. Okay. It depends on exclusively on the Ministry of Agriculture. So this is just a guess.
All right. And Tatiana, a question for you. So you probably work with a lot of developers on this, and the question is, what requirement did you see from France that usually stalls or kills a project? So in practice.
I would say to keep the agriculture significant, because as Martin said, there's a variability, and this criteria must be respected throughout the whole lifespan of the installation, and it's not very easy to demonstrate that the agricultural production remains the main activity, or that it is a significant agricultural production. The criteria is of 90% of yield is actually not that easy to respect or to demonstrate. So I would say that that is the most difficult criteria to respect.
Thank you. And I have a question for all of you. So this is from Sylvia, and they would like to know, in your respective countries of expertise, is it possible to build an agrivoltaic plant on an allotment that is currently not cultivated? So for example, marginal land on slopes that maybe was farmed once, but it's now abandoned. Is there for one of you that it's more relevant, or?
Well, maybe I can reply.
Yeah.
Well, I can start, let's say. There is specific rule for the abandoned land. Of course, in that case, you cannot consider the turnover that is previously, so because there was no turnover at all. So the actual regulations say that you have to consider the turnover of, say, standard agricultural activity in the surrounding. However, there are two types of land that we might consider. The first one is the one that is just, let's say, on rest for several years. That is not really technical abandon, and then there is the abandoned one. So the first one, it's based on this regulation. On the second side, we don't still have a regulation, so it's the same approach that we have for the project, the land on rest. But there is a big discussion because actually there are a lot of projects that are on the land that are pretty close to be desertic, so close by to become the desert. And from our perspective, land like this must be, let's say, safe from the lack of agriculture. So in case of an IPP would like to develop in such areas, probably from our perspective, should be ramp up in order to facilitate also the authorization process.
Okay. Does the same apply quickly to all of your other countries to build a plant on uncultivated allotments? Maybe, yeah, go on.
If I may, in Spain we still have a lack of definition of what agrivoltaics is. So yes, you can do a pilot project wherever you want, but basically it will be very hard to get a cap subsidy on it, because at the moment, how is it framed? It's framed to allow cap subsidies to the projects that are being developed under the schedule of subsidies of the Ministry of Energy. So so basically you can do it. Permitting, I believe permitting still applies, the PV permitting, depending on the size of the or how many kilowatts, or if it's over 500 kilowatts or less, and if it's 15 kilowatts or less, and on the land. But yes, normally you can do it as a pilot project, but it would be very hard to have a cap subsidy on it.
Okay, that is clear. I think we have a lot of questions. I'll collect them and share them with the speakers after with the email so that they can respond to you. But I will take a final question. This is from Pierre-Antoine. I believe open to the floor, not specific. So is there a risk by removing the references to technological restrictions? I think maybe from Martijn. Is there a risk that this opens the door to structures that are technically PV plants with minimal agronomic value, especially if the yield comparison is also dropped?
I mean, we are not very fan of technological restrictions, because it's as you know, agrivoltaics is very variable from one site to the other, from one crop to the other. So we are not very into regulating this technology-wise. You can have the same amount of shading depending if you install a semi-transparent panel or if you install it higher in height. So restricting this shouldn't be good for the development of the industry. And then, well, it depends exclusively on the crop that you will have. The tendencies here in Spain are for cereal are inter-row kind of setups, but if you go to woody crops like vineyards or I don't know, olive trees, then for over 4 meter structures, that should be it. Or this is a tendency at the moment in Spain, at least with the tiny market that we have.
Does anybody else want to quickly comment as well on technological restrictions? So moving it.
Yeah, maybe I would say indeed we see this risk, since let's say also in Germany we see different type of installation. Even if we have a quite sophisticated framework, we see that agrivoltaics then is often designed with a clear focus on the economic, much stronger energy production, and let's say with difficulties in the agricultural use. So we see indeed the necessity to have a quite differentiated framework, and especially differentiated there. I totally agree. It need to be differentiated in terms of which crops you wanted to grow there. But there we see that the agriculture need to be protected, since in economic terms it has no chance. Some percentage more in energy production is economically more viable than the whole agricultural production, and this leads to the question that it really need to be protected.
Thank you, Sasha. Okay, so that is just about wraps up this webinar. We look forward to seeing all of you at the upcoming conference if you wish to continue the conversation. And the people whose questions we did not get to, I can see Stephen, Pierre-Antoine, and Ivan, we will write to you by email. So thank you to all the speakers today, Tatiana, Martin, Sasha, and Alessio. And thank you for all of you who joined our webinar. Have a good Wednesday.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.